Let's go ahead and get started with our final presentation for the evening. We'll be hearing from Kendra Graham and Rachel Hopkins on the topic of livestock identification and tagging. Just to give a little bit of background on these ladies, Kendra Graham has been a field specialist in livestock with the University of Missouri Extension for almost 19 years, and I know that because she and I started at about the same time. And she's headquartered in the southeast part of Missouri. She's focused much of her career on youth and ag, the Show Me Select Heifer program, the Missouri grazing schools, and small ruminant production. During non-work hours, Kendra runs a beef cow-calf operations with her two sons, her husband, her two sons, and her parents. Her sons also maintain a small swine herd and poultry flock. Rachel Hopkins grew up in Davisville, Missouri on her grandparents' dairy farm. She received her bachelor's degree in ag business from Missouri State in Springfield and her master's from Missouri State as well in natural and applied sciences. She worked at MFA for a number of years before joining Extension in 2016. She has one daughter with her husband, Joe. Rachel and her husband are partners and operate a cow-calf operation with Rachel's father in Davisville. She enjoys riding horses and cooking and canning in her spare time. So I'll hand things over to these ladies.
Hello everyone. I have the pleasure of presenting to you about various identification methods utilized on typical livestock operations in Missouri. This presentation and content was made possible by a USDA National Institute of Food Agriculture Beginning Farmer and Rancher grant written by Karen Fungabush and Debbie Kelly. I would like to give credit to Rachel Hopkins, Ag Business Specialist, for compiling and editing the video and audio content. I also appreciate the help of John Langdon, Livestock Specialist in South Central Missouri, for helping create the freeze branding video. If you are a beginning farmer, we encourage you to look into our beginning farmer resources. This includes classes, workshops, one-on-one assistance, and other opportunities. A flyer included in the materials associated with this session also outlines some specific programs we have available through the Beginning Farmer Rancher Grant. Animal ID methods and preferences vary across the United States. In 2017, USDA's National Animal Health Monitoring System conducted a producer survey of management practices, including ID of livestock. The table shown here summarizes the responses. Across the 24 states surveyed, 80% of the livestock operations identify their animals either individually or as a group. Plastic ear tags are by far the preferred method of ID. Hot brands are the second most utilized identification method. However, it should be noted that Western states with large numbers of cattle use a hot brand as a farm or herd ID rather than an individual identification method. You can find the complete explanation of this information in USDA's Beef Cow-Calf Management Practices in the United States, Report Number 1. There are many reasons why animal identification is important on a farm operation. One of these is establishing ownership of the animals. A certain farm may have multiple owners of animals. Sometimes boundary fences between farms may be damaged, allowing animals to commingle, and it is important to be able to tell which animals belong to which neighbor. Also, you may want to commingle animals during marketing and know which animals belong to which owner. Record keeping and animal performance is also extremely important in a farming operation. Identification allows the matching of offspring with their mothers, recording animal weights, administering medication, and monitoring withdrawal times. Animal traceability and movement of some classes of livestock within a state or across state lines require specific animal identification. Finally, theft recovery is extremely important, as sometimes permanent forms of ID, such as brands, aids, law enforcement professionals in recovering or tracing stolen or lost livestock. Permanent ID may also deter theft. There are two general types of animal identification: permanent and temporary. Permanent forms of identification are the most reliable and effective, especially when paired with temporary, more visual forms of identification. Permanent ID can be more expensive and time-consuming to apply, but that identification follows the animal throughout its entire life. Some of the more common forms of permanent animal identification include tattooing, branding, whether it be hot or freeze branding, and ear notching, although DNA is becoming much more commonplace. Freeze branding is a form of permanent, individual, and herd identification that is not heavily used on livestock operations. According to the 2017 USDA National Health Monitoring System survey, 5% of operations use freeze branding. However, 26% of operations use hot branding, mainly as a whole herd identification method. It is thought that lack of training or knowledge on how to freeze brand deters producers from implementing it on their operations. Freeze branding utilizes liquid nitrogen or dry ice to chill irons, and when applied to the hide, destroys the pigment-producing cells. The hair will then grow back white, leaving a very visible identification on the animal. Freeze branding is less painful to the animal and more desirable in industry because it causes less damage to the hide. The list of supplies used in our freeze branding video include dry ice, methanol, a heavy-duty cooler, copper or brass branding irons with either a 3/8 or 9/16 inch wide face, a pump sprayer, clippers, clipper lubricant, a stopwatch for keeping time, and gloves. It is also a good idea to somehow label your branding irons so you will not have to continually lift them out of the liquid to determine what the number is. In this case, we utilized ear tags tying them to the handles of the irons. The dry ice was purchased from a local grocery store. 15 pounds of dry ice should be enough to do a small size herd, and purchase enough methanol to cover the irons 1 inch deep. Begin by clipping the area that is to be branded. It should be fairly clean, using the brush to brush any debris away. Clip the area with regular clipper blades and no guard attached, clipping against the hair. After the area is clipped and debris removed, soak the area with methanol using your spray bottle. Apply the brand one at a time and maintain firm pressure with a slight rocking motion to ensure the brand is level on all sides. If the animal jumps around or moves, remove the brand, wait till the animal calms down, and reapply pressure in the same spot. Immediately following branding, as you can see here, the skin will be indented and feels frozen to the touch. After branding, it will swell 2 to 3 times the size until about 72 hours after branding. It will take about 2 months before you are able to see the finished brand and it show up white. Skin contact time for the brands depends on cattle age and hide thickness. For example, Hereford-type cattle tend to have a thicker hide, and you need to add 5 to 10 seconds to the contact time. For calves, the dry ice and alcohol method requires a 30 to 40 second contact time. Yearlings, as shown in this video here, is a 40 to 60 second contact time. Cows, being older and thicker hided, will require a 60 to 80 second contact time. Remember, a freeze-branded animal's hair will come back in white. If you have light-colored animals, you may want to consider a hot brand, similar to the one shown here. Hot brands tend to require less supplies. However, it does damage the hide, reducing the value, causes the animal more pain, and is not necessarily visible when hair is longer. Official identification brands must be registered with the Missouri Department of Agriculture and recorded in the Missouri Marks and Brands of Animal Law to prove ownership and be considered legal evidence in a court of law. The fee to register a brand is $35. Brands can also be transferred from one person to another. Applications for a brand can be done through the Missouri Department of Agriculture at agriculture.mo.gov/animals/brand book. A tattoo in the ear of the animal is a common form of permanent identification utilized by registered herds or flocks. The tattoo is typically used in cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, and rabbits. Tattoo placement is almost always in the ear of the animal. It is best to utilize green or black ink, with green being more popular, especially in darker colored animals. Use the proper size, numbers, or letters in the tattoo gun for the animal you are tattooing. A 3/8 inch size is typically used for all cattle, adult sheep, goats, and pigs. A 5/16 inch size letters or numbers are used for young sheep, goats, pigs, and almost all rabbits. Ear notching is another form of permanent animal identification that can be utilized as a group or herd flock ID or as an individual animal ID similar to the swine industry. In these photos, the owner of these cattle chose to ear notch the animals in a certain ear, in this case the right ear, to establish which farm the animals came from when they were commingled. Any livestock species can have an established numbering system for ear notches. However, the swine industry has the most recognized system, utilizing the right ear as a litter number and the left ear as a pig number. The sow in this photo is carrying the ear notch number 3-3, indicating she was the third pig born in the third litter of the year on that particular farm. Nose prints are a form of permanent animal identification that is very similar to fingerprints in humans. These are typically used to identify cattle, sheep, and goats in exhibition competitions. Nose printing is useful for exhibition animals because it is a form of ID that cannot be altered. When an exhibitor enters an animal into an exhibition with a nose print, it can be checked again after the show to ensure the same animal was utilized. DNA analysis for identification purposes is mainly used as a traceability tool or to identify parentage. It is a quickly emerging method of evaluating an individual animal's genetic production traits. Sample types utilized for DNA testing include blood that can be sent in on a blood card, as you see here, tissue samples taken with an ear tag like tissue sampler in this photo, or hair samples. Be sure you have enough of the hair root to send in for a sample. Microchips, as a form of permanent animal identification, is utilized heavily in the companion animal realm. However, it is not used frequently in the food animal production realm because it can migrate throughout the body and be found in meat tissue during processing. This is also a costly ID method in a production situation. Forms of temporary animal identification are easily visible, functional, and also easy to apply. However, temporary identification can be easily removed or lost. This can lead to gaps in animal records. Ideally, a producer would pair temporary IDs with a form of permanent identification, or at least have two forms of temporary identification to ensure animal identity. Forms of temporary animal identification include ear tags, also encompassing radio frequency ID tags, leg bands, neck bands, and paint. Ear tags are the most common form of visual temporary identification, with many types and colors available. Shown here is the button type 2-piece tag in a calf size, followed by the 1-piece tag shown in calf size and small animal size, and then the cow size or feedlot size. Numbering systems for ear tags can be very simple or very complex. One example is utilizing the Beef Improvement Federation year letter code chart, putting the letter related to the year the animal was born first on the ear tag, followed by a number. Some producers use the birth year in the animal number or even the dam number. Ear tag color can be used to identify animals. Males and females can have different color tags, or you can use a different color tag for animals born in the fall versus the spring. Ear tag placement can differentiate animals, with females tagged in the left ear and males tagged in the right ear. Also, any combination of the mentioned practices can be very effective identification methods. A radio frequency identification transponder tag contains an electronic chip that stores the number information in it. It has no power of its own and is activated by the signal from a reader, typically in a wand format. Once the reader picks up the number from the tag, it can instantly be transferred to some sort of data accumulator, which would be in the form of a laptop, handheld computer, phone, or scale head, and recorded automatically. This can help ease the burden of chute-side records, as animal information and weights can be paired with this. Ear tag placement is crucial to ensure proper retention. Avoid placing tags through the veins or cartilage of the ear to prevent ear damage. This photo shows how easily it is for an animal to rip out an ear tag when it is placed in the lower lobe or towards the outside of the ear. Metal tags, such as the one seen here, are commonly used by veterinarians when animals have been vaccinated for brucellosis, also called OCV tags. Metal tags are also commonly used through the scrapie eradication program in sheep and goats. Tags with the U.S. Shield are animal disease traceability tags and are required for some animals to move through interstate commerce or exhibition. When transporting animals within a state or across state lines, it is important to pay attention to USDA transportation or animal disease traceability regulations. Brands, tattoos, and approved metal ear tags are required for beef animals over 18 months of age that are sexually intact, cattle used for exhibition, rodeo, and recreational events, and all dairy cattle. For swine, breeding stock, including sows and boars, even those moving into slaughter channels, must have some form of identification approved by the state veterinarian. This includes an official ear tag, a group lot identification number, ear notches, and tattoos. Feeder and slaughter swine, other than sows and boars, are exempt from this identification requirement. All equine must have an official negative equine infectious anemia test within 12 months of change of ownership. All sheep and goats traveling within Missouri are required to have an official scrapie tag. To order scrapie tags, you can call the official scrapie eradication program through USDA at 1-866-USDA-TAG. You should continue to pay attention to the ever-changing USDA animal disease traceability rules, as recently USDA has encouraged the use of electronic identification for animals, and it has been under comment to require this for animals moving interstate. USDA continues to focus on enhancing the ability to track animals electronically from birth to slaughter to increase the health monitoring and disease traceability of livestock, as well as the safety of our ever-increasing food supply in the United States. Leg bands are a temporary form of animal identification commonly used in our poultry industry and our dairy industry. The dairy industry also utilizes neck bands that typically carries a transponder containing a microchip to signal readers in the milking parlor or the feed distribution system. Livestock markers and paint are a very short-term identification method that can be rubbed off very quickly. However, this can be a very useful tool when sorting animals the day it is applied. So in summary, permanent and temporary forms of animal identification are very important in allowing producers to prove ownership, aid in record keeping and animal performance measurements, marketing animals, providing animal traceability and movement records, and also aid in theft recovery. Permanent forms of animal identification are optimal for livestock producers, however, tend to be more time-consuming to apply. Plastic ear tags are the most common form of animal identification, and it is noted that any form of ID is preferred to none at all. I would like to again thank the Missouri Beginning Farmers USDA NEFA grant for providing support for this program, along with Rachel Hopkins, Ag Business Specialist, for video editing. With that, I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Awesome. Thanks, Kendra and Rachel. Jenna, do we have any questions?
I've got a couple questions that came in through the chat. Let's see. The first one was, if freeze branding ends up with a mistake, maybe the iron wasn't on for long enough, let's say, but you don't end up with a usable mark, can you repeat it?
So thanks for the question. You can try to modify basically the outline of whatever number you were using is going to kill the or disrupt the color producing cells in the animal's body. So if you apply the brand over it again to try to get a clearer picture, basically it's just going to modify those cells a little more, and you could have more of a more legible outline of your brand. However, if trying to undo a number, if you put a wrong number on, would be a bit of a challenge. So trying to change that number is going to be a problem later on. Maybe just completely covering that number and trying to do another number is your best option.
Okay, our next question, still with freeze branding, asks if freeze brand depigments the skin as well. Could someone clip or shave the animal and then remove the identification if it only colored the hair?
You would have to shave that animal pretty close. There's still going to be hair on that animal, even if you clip it fairly close. So as you saw, we shaved the hair fairly close, and it still showed up after a period of time, even if the hair was short. So basically, you would have to get a razor out and shave that animal bald. I still think it could discolor the hide a little bit and leave some residual. But to be honest, I've never shaved an animal that close to tell.
Okay, our next question is about tattoos, and they want to know why green is more preferred with tattoos.
So sometimes our animals, we saw the ears of animals that did have some pink pigment in it. Sometimes those ears are darker, and green does show up a little bit on those black ears. So as opposed to using black, and so that's why green is the typical preferred method. So you don't ever have to guess if it's going to show up on any of the animals, even if they have dark or light ears.
For tattoos, do you use the tattoo punch before or after applying the dye?
So there's two different ways that I've seen this done. You can put the dye on or the ink on first, then apply the tattoo and apply the ink again. But I've also seen it to where they actually punch the tattoo and then apply the ink after that. So I think the ink, as long as it gets into those holes, it should come out okay. You may have a little bit more of a mess on your pins of your tattoo applicator if you apply the ink before.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions that have come in. One is, what is the cost difference between using a plastic ear tag versus the RFID?
So typically the RFID tags come with a set of plastic visual tags. Those can range anywhere from $250 to for the pair $2.50 to up to $5-6 per pair with the RFID and the visual tag. If you were just getting a simple ear tag, just the visual tag, you can buy the feedlot tags that were shown in one of those pictures for 25 cents a piece. And then some of the other tags are just a little over $1 a piece. So if you have larger numbers of animals that you're tagging, then that cost maybe not justified if you don't utilize that RFID tag.
Our next question is, where do you buy the branding irons?
So the branding irons, the one place that I've seen probably with the best price, there is a L&H branding company. And if you Google that, they have branding irons for sale. Again, make sure you get those brass or heavy metal ones for those irons, and not, they make some that are just for application for paint. They're a very thin metal and won't withstand either the heat or the freeze, extreme cold on the freeze branding.
All right, thanks so much, Jenna. And thanks so much, Kendra and Rachel, for putting together such a thorough and informational presentation. Excellent job. What a nice way to end out the evening's program.